1991. You look at what was big then. And it was a lot of safe stuff. There was Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Michael Bolton, Taylor Dane, Amy Grant. This was the year Garth Brooks started, and the soft Nashville stuff starts coming, and this is something that really needed to happen.
It's not an accident that Garth Brooks and Nirvana broke about the same time. Garth Brooks took the old rock fans, the soft rock fans, the Jackson Browne fans, the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young fans. He took them away to country radio for a while. Rock and roll has to periodically reinvent itself, get younger.
At the time, you know, the music that was out there that was in the, you know, in the top of the charts, the rock and roll at least, was this horrible big hair metal by like Poison and these guys wearing more makeup than your mom, you know. And so for Nirvana to break through when they did, it just kind of was, personally for me, it was like, God, one of us made it through. Like, you could do this. You could get up there in your jeans and your t-shirt and not brush your hair and just like scream and rail, and it can be as cathartic as you want, and it can work. You don't have to have it funneled through the ideas of 1,600 music industry people and handlers and a big glossy video. It can just be this cool, scrappy thing that came from a garage.
The image was just fascinating, their looks and what they represented. Also the fact that this is now a city sound. There's a Seattle scene. And Nirvana begins the Seattle thing.
Seattle, that lies sleepless on the northwest coast of the U.S., would not have been an obvious candidate as a world music center. Sure, it gave us Starbucks, Jimi Hendrix, Gypsy Rose Lee, jet planes, and the Happy Face logo. But late into the 20th century, there was no obvious sign that this was a town that was going to set the rock world on its ear.
Live music scene in Seattle really sucked in the 80s. It mostly was cover bands. There weren't a lot of clubs. And in some ways, that actually helped, I think, the Seattle music scene, because bands decided to, well, there's not much else we can do, let's make our own record.
There were 1 or 2 places to play original live music in Seattle. And there'd been 10 or 15 years of great bands, or what we thought were great bands in Seattle, who tried and who never got out. The only act from that area, there were 2 acts from the Seattle area who'd made money before the whole grunge thing happened, Kenny G and Hart. Those were not exactly templates that one wished to follow if one were a punk musician, say.
There was a geographic isolation that helped a lot too, that most of the bands from here really weren't inspired by other groups. They really followed their own muse, and in some ways I think that made them more original.
When Nirvana hit, you know, record companies, when something hits and something is hot, rather than saying, hey, that was great, now let's go look for something else. When something hits, they want to keep that formula going. Hey, if Nirvana is going to sell millions of records, let's go get another Nirvana. So Nirvana's from Seattle, so let's go to Seattle. Well, usually that formula doesn't work, but in this case, there really was a very good music scene going on in Seattle. So when they would go to Seattle, they would find not only Nirvana, but Pearl Jam, but Alice in Chains, you know, Mother Love Bone at the time. There were all these bands, Soundgarden, that were in the Seattle area that were just kick-ass rock bands.
Nirvana found their first success with a local independent record label known as Sub Pop.
They were 2 of the smartest marketers and promoters the music industry has seen since Colonel Tom Parker made Elvis a star. Those 2 guys knew how to write ads, to design albums, to create a style.
Of course, no record label prospers without the right artist. It was Sub Pop which first recorded Nirvana, whose success inspired a boom in do-it-yourself recording, as the music, once classified as alternative, went mainstream.
They became these spokespeople, the kind of the kings of the scene, as it were. And I know that Kurt always wanted to be successful, and I think he worked at his songwriting the way that, you know, any craftsperson works at their craft. You know, I don't think that it was just a spontaneous exercise in expression. I think that he really worked at these things, and he made better and better songs.
He writes these incredibly dark and depressing songs about how life is shit and life is depressing. And yet, he's married and he just brought a child into the world. And I asked him why he did that. And he answered that
I really was a lot more negative and angry and everything else a few years ago, but that had a lot to do with not having a mate, you know, not having a steady girlfriend and stuff like that. So you know, that was one of the main things that was bothering me, that I wouldn't admit at the time, you know. So now that I've found that, the world seems a lot better for some reason, you know. It really does change your attitude.